Hey everyone, and welcome to this explainer. Today, we're going to unpack something that is literally so fundamental to our daily lives, yet, we almost always overlook it. We're diving into the fascinating and honestly almost invisible science of how we send and receive messages every single day. I mean, think about it. Every text you send, every ad you scroll past, every conversation you have, they're all governed by these underlying mechanics that researchers have spent decades trying to map out. So today, we're going to look at the exact blueprints of human interaction. Okay, let's dive right into this. We'll start with the evolution of communication, then build our foundation with Berlow's model, introduce mathematics, signals, and noise, close the feedback loop, and finally, look at the power of opinion leaders. Let's build the ultimate communication model. Section 1. The evolution of communication, building the ultimate model. Section 2. Berlow's SMCR model, the basic building blocks from 1960. So, way back in 1960, David Berlow mapped out this very clean, very linear journey to isolate exactly how a message simply gets from point A to point B. And at this stage, we're really looking at communication as a basic one-way transmission of signals, kind of like a machine firing off data. It all starts with the sender. That's the source who originates the message. Then you have the message itself, its content, the structure, the code it's in. Third is the channel, the medium used to actually send it. In basic human interaction, this relies completely on our five senses, hearing, seeing, touching, smelling, and tasting. And finally, we reach the receiver, the person who actually gets and decodes that message. Sender, message, channel, receiver, SMCR. It's neat, it's organized, and it gives us our essential building blocks. Now, what's really fascinating about this slide is that Berlow recognized we aren't just robots, right? The sender and receiver are human beings, and we're influenced by all these deep internal and external factors. For a message to successfully transfer, elements like your communication skills, your attitude, your knowledge, social systems, and culture, they absolutely must perfectly sync up for both the sender and the receiver. Think about it. If a sender has this immense knowledge but the receiver doesn't, or if they come from clashing cultural backgrounds with totally different social norms, the message gets completely warped. The thinking pattern of the receiver actually has to be in sync with the sender for it to work. But as elegant as Berlow's SMCR model is, it's got some pretty glaring, albeit kind of cute, flaws. It's a bit naive. It assumes this perfect, uninterrupted monologue. There is absolutely no concept of feedback here, so we have no idea what effect the message actually had. There's no concept of noise or barriers either. It is strictly a one-way street. Essentially, it assumes the sender and receiver are these perfectly matched clones operating in a vacuum with no differences and zero distractions. And well, we all know the real world doesn't work like that at all. Which brings us to Section 3. Mathematics, signals, and noise, the Shannon-Weaver model from 1948. Let's step back for a second to 1948. Mathematician Claude Shannon and engineer Warren Weaver were actually just trying to improve data transmission for things like telephone cables. But they asked this one central question that totally revolutionized how we view human communication. What happens when the message breaks down? Picture being on a really terrible, static-filled cell phone connection where every other word cuts out, or, trying to read an email that's just packed with highly technical jargon you don't understand. The communication channel is technically open, but the message itself is entirely lost. And that breakdown introduced a groundbreaking concept to our models: noise. Noise is basically any physical or psychological interference that disrupts communication. Shannon and Weaver categorized this into two main types. First up is channel noise. This is your static on the radio, a dropped Wi-Fi connection, physical transmission issues. Second is semantic noise. Now this happens when the receiver physically gets the message, but they completely misinterpret it because the language is too complex, or the terminology is just unfamiliar. By adding noise into the mix, our model suddenly acknowledges that the real world is messy and full of interruptions. So, how do we fix it? Shannon and Weaver proposed surprisingly simple, yet highly effective solutions to bypass these pesky barriers. To combat channel noise, you use redundancy. That just means reiterating the central idea of your message, so even if one signal drops, the core meaning still gets through. And to diminish semantic noise, you tailor your vocabulary to align with your specific audience's needs and comprehension levels. Basically, you adapt. Section 4. Closing the feedback loop with DeFleur's model. And this brilliantly illustrates Melvin DeFleur's massive patch to the system. He finally gave our messages a return address. Notice the paradigm shift here. Linear, one-way models of the past simply end at a destination. But by introducing a circular, two-way feedback loop, receivers aren't just passive buckets collecting information anymore. They're empowered to become senders themselves.
This is the pivotal aha moment where communication officially transforms from a simple monologue into a really dynamic dialogue.
To make this super concrete, let's walk through a highly relatable, real-world application from the source material, how advertising uses DeFlore's loop. Imagine a company encodes a message into an ad and broadcasts it out via mass media. You, the receiver, get the message. But it doesn't stop there. Your reaction, whether you go buy the product, post about it on social networks, or ignore it completely, that flows back as feedback. Now the company becomes the receiver. They analyze this feedback device to pinpoint exactly what their target audience actually wants, they adjust their message, and they resend it. It's this continuous, strategic cycle of listening and reacting. Section 5. The Power of Opinion Leaders and Katz and Lazarsfeld's Two-Step Flow Theory. So in 1944, Elihu Katz and Paul Lazarsfeld zoomed way out to the macro level of society to study a presidential election campaign. They were asking a massive question. Do mass media messages, like those on the radio or in newspapers, have a direct influence on the voting mandate of the public? Does the media just, beam instructions directly into our brains? Unexpectedly, their data said, no way. They found that formal mass media actually had far less influence on voter decision-making than informal, everyday personal communication. And the reason for this? It's all because of a crucial key player they identified, the opinion leader. An opinion leader is this guiding figure within a specific, organized social group. Think of a managing director in a corporation, a local political figure, or even just a highly engaged community guide. They consume the mass media, they interpret it, and then they convey it to the less active members of their specific group. They act as the vital social bridge between broad mass broadcasts and the general public. Let's break down exactly how these leaders operate because it's fascinating. First, their influence isn't just scattered everywhere. It's heavily concentrated within specific organized social groups. Second, they kind of act like human algorithms. They filter content based on what they deem relevant to their group. Third, and perhaps most importantly, they infuse their own perspectives into the original content before passing it along. They put their own spin on it. Finally, they primarily target less active or low-end media users, basically people who might not have the time, the resources, or the desire to access all that raw information directly. Now, the crucial point here is that communication theories are always evolving because, society is always evolving. While the two-step flow theory was an absolute game-changer in 1944, modern critics point out a slightly different reality today. Recent research shows that with our current tech, mass media often reaches the general public directly. That strict two-step process doesn't always apply anymore, since a piece of breaking news can completely bypass opinion leaders and hit our phone screens instantly. Yet the psychology of influence is absolutely still there. Even in an age of direct, instant transmission, we still look to trusted voices to help us decode all the noise. So as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with this final, provocative question to reflect on. Who are the opinion leaders filtering the information you consume every single day? Whether it's a popular online personality, a community leader, or an actual algorithm, understanding how these models work is the very first step to truly understanding the messages shaping your world. Keep analyzing, keep questioning, and I'll see you in the next explainer.